With the large coal order now completed, the engines thought that the workload would die down a bit. But unfortunately for them, that was not the case at all, as the summer rush had just begun, meaning that both passenger and goods trains became longer and heavier than usual. No matter how hard the engines tried, they just couldn't keep up with the workload and were beginning to strain badly. Mr. Waters knew this and decided to temporarily borrow another engine from another preserved railway to help out with the passenger trains until the workload died down. That way, his own engines wouldn't be straining too much. The engines were relieved by this news and couldn't wait for the visitor to arrive, albeit they had to wait a whole week until the engine did. On the day that the visitor was supposed to arrive, the resident engines were discussing on what type of engine the visitor could be. Well, the visitor should be arriving any second now. What type of engine do you all think it could be?
Perhaps it's another large tank engine, like me.
Or maybe it's another mixed traffic engine, like me. I don't think that's likely, you two. From what I've heard, this engine is a Victorian design from Scotland, so it's either from the Caledonian, the North British, or the Highland.
Whoever this engine is, I hope they can lift some weight off our puffers.
You're telling me, Lewis. Aside from my usual goods trains, I've been having to deputize the occasional passenger train too. I'm exhausted. I just hope the new engine gets here soon. Just as Roland had finished his sentence, the engines heard a deep, booming whistle that echoed across the yard. Well, Roland, looks like your wish has been granted. The engines looked ahead to see the visitor approaching them. To everyone's surprise, the engine looked exactly like Lewis, same livery and all. They all thought that Lewis was the sole survivor of his class. They didn't know that another one had survived. The engine slowly approached them before stopping just before the turntable. Is this Somerville? Indeed it is. Who might you be? Me name's Brooke. It's a pleasure to meet you all. Well, how about that, Lewis? Another member of your class. Must be exciting, isn't it? Lewis? Mitch expected Lewis to be overjoyed to see one of his siblings again, but Lewis was filled with pure rage.
What in the name of Drummond are you doing here? I thought I told you to stay out of my way!
Lewis, please,
I didn't want to hear it! You've put me through enough already! I won't stand for it anymore!
Do you honestly think I would spend 97 years plotting against you?
Yes I do! Out of all of my siblings that could have been preserved, why did it have to be you?
All the engines stared in shock after Lewis said those words. None of them had ever seen Lewis act like this before, especially to one of his own siblings. Lewis,
Forget this, I have a train to pull.
And without another word, Lewis set off to collect his train, shooting daggers at Brooke as he left the sheds. All Brooke could do was watch her brother leave the yard, continuing to shoot daggers straight at her until he was out of sight. Not long after Lewis left with his train, Brooke set off to collect her train, leaving the other engines in complete silence. Not long after Brooke left the yard, Mitch broke the silence. What just happened?
I've never seen Lewis act like this.
I don't think any of us have, Isla. We need to do something about this. We can't have all this tension in the air during Brooke's stay.
We need to try to talk to him about this.
And how exactly are we going to do that, Marshall?
All of us need to be here tonight so that we can confront him so we can know why he acted the way he did.
That sounds like a plan. We'll do it tonight. And so it was arranged. Throughout the day, Lewis either completely ignored Brooke or shot menacing glares at her every chance he got. Mr. Waters even arranged a Caledonian special for the pair of them to pull, but Lewis refused to pull it, so Brooke had to do it with Edmund instead. The tensions between the two siblings were getting worse throughout the day, and the engines knew they had to put a stop to it. Eventually, night fell, and the engines were at Somerville sheds waiting for Lewis to arrive. Brooke had opted to stay at Louise's sheds, so there wouldn't be any tensions between them. Alright, he should be here any second now. Remember, we're here to help him, not stress him. At that very moment, the engines heard an all too familiar whistle. Right on cue. And sure enough, there was Lewis, backing down towards them, heading for the open berth between Mitch and Gannon. Lewis noticed that all the engines were staring at him with both stern and concerned looks. As Lewis settled down into his berth, he spoke up to see what the problem was.
What's with all the looks?
Lewis, we need to have a talk.
We want to know why you have a grudge against your sister.
We've been noticing your behavior throughout the day, and it's quite concerning to say the least.
We need you to tell us everything so that we can understand this situation fully. I'd rather not talk about it.
Lewis, listen. I may have only been built 4 years ago, but even I know things will get worse if this whole thing isn't resolved. Trust me, you don't want a sibling for an enemy. We need you to tell us what happened. It isn't going to do you any good trying to hide it. It's better to let it out than to let it fester in your mind.
Please, Lewis, you can talk to us.
Lewis said nothing for a bit, but then he gave in.
You really want to know what happened? Fine, I'll tell you. This was decades ago, back when I worked on the Caledonian. I was the third to last member of my class built in 1891. Me and me siblings hauled express trains until newer and stronger engines came along. Brooke was built 2 years before me. She was the only one of us to be christened with a name. This privilege went straight to her smoke box, and she developed a superiority complex because of it. She harassed and bullied the rest of us to no end, often picking petty squabbles with us. She even managed to get most of the newer engines on her side. I was her prime target as I mostly ignored her, and it worked for the most part, until that fateful day. It was in early 1924. I was refueling after taking a local passenger train, and Brooke suddenly ran into me and nearly threw me into the turntable well, all because I had been ignoring her and her arrogance. I was mere millimeters from falling in when another engine came in and told her to back off. She did so, snarling at me as she did. I was traumatized from it all, and it took me several weeks for me to fully recover. Not long after, I left the LMS and came to live here, which I've done so ever since. I thought she had scrapped a long time ago, but that sadly wasn't the case.
All the engines were at a loss for words. None of them had ever expected this to be the outcome. Then, Mitch spoke once more. I understand where you're coming from, Lewis, but that was nearly a century ago. I think it's best if you move on. I've spoken to her today, and she seems very remorseful for what she's done.
If she wants my forgiveness, she'll have to earn it!
Lewis, for the love of Paddington, just listen to me!
We're done with this discussion. Good night!
And with that, Lewis reversed into the sheds and promptly fell asleep. Well, that didn't go according to plan. Yeah, no kidding. Let's just get some sleep. We'll try again tomorrow. And so, one by one, the engines fell asleep. Mitch was the last to fall asleep. He knew that if he wanted Lewis to put his grudge to rest, he would have to take matters into his own buffers. The next day, Mitch brought one of his usual local trains to Louisu. He glided gently into the station a few minutes ahead of schedule. Whilst he waited for all of his passengers to disembark, Mitch chatted to the Class 158s in the mainline platform. Unfortunately, their conversation didn't last too long, as it was soon time for the mainline train to head back to Paddington. Mitch bid them farewell, hoping that he would be able to speak to them again soon. He watched the multiple units roll out of the station and continued to watch them until they had cleared the junction. Once the mainline train was out of sight, Mitch headed off to the sheds for a rest, and to find a certain someone to talk to. When he got to the sheds, he found Brooke sitting all alone. After spinning around on the turntable, he reversed into the berth next to her. Morning, Brooke. Oh, Mitch, was it? Yes, that's me. I need to talk to you about something very important. Okay, what is it? It's about your past. Lewis told me that you nearly knocked into a turntable one day. Is that true? Brooke looked at her buffers and sighed. Yes, it is. I was a complete spoiled brat back then. But not long after Lewis left, karma came knocking at me shed door. Not long after Lewis left, even bigger and stronger engines than before came on the scene, and the engines who I thought were my friends turned against me, as I was much older compared to them. Knowing this, I had realized I had finally gotten what I deserved. Karma had finally caught up to me. I went from being the bully to becoming the bullied. This continued on for 4 years, until I was withdrawn in 1928. Not long after this, I was privately purchased on rail tours across Scotland. Knowing that I had a future ahead of me, I knew it was time to make amends with the ones I had hurt. I did everything in my power to make amends with them. And amazingly, the majority of them forgave me, as they saw that I was no longer the engine I once was. After all that, I shifted my focus to the younger engines and tried to warn them not to make the same mistake I did, or go down the same path. While some engines laughed and mocked me, saying I was nothing but a worthless pile of scrap, others listened to me and took my advice, and became better engines as a result. This continued until I was moved to the Strathspey Railway in the 1980s, where I've remained ever since. The only engine that didn't forgive me was Lewis. I tried to get in contact with him, but he was so far down south I wasn't able to. When I was told I'd be coming to this railway to help out for the summer, I thought it would be the perfect time to make amends with him. But no, I think me coming here was a mistake. Huh, I didn't think so. Both engines jumped. Neither of them had noticed Alistair in the far corner of the shed. Things will get better, Brooke. It'll just take time. And I should know, I did forgive you after all. How do you fit into all this, Alistair? The engine who told her to back off before she nearly knocked Lewis into the turntable, well, was me. Mitch was shocked by this revelation. You? Aye, me. I didn't speak to her for several years after that. But once I saw that she was no longer the engine she once was, I gladly forgave her. It will take time, Brooke, but I promise you, Lewis will forgive you before you leave. I hope so. I just hope I have a chance sooner rather than later. Fortunately for Brooke, her chance came the very next day. On that day, Brooke was sitting in the sheds at Somerville after bringing in local service. She was resting comfortably when she heard footsteps coming towards her. It was the shed foreman, and he looked absolutely frantic. Brooke, thank goodness you're here. It's urgent. Lewis is stranded at Creek River Station, and I need you to bring him and his trainer to Louisa to meet its connection. Okay, sir, but what happened? Apparently, one of the brake lines in one of the coaches wasn't maintained properly, but that doesn't matter now. You need to get going, now. Of course, sir. I'll get going straight away. And without haste, Brooke set off to find her little brother. Eventually, Brooke made it to Creek River Station, where she found Lewis and his train stranded at the platform. Lewis was relieved to see that an engine had come to help him, but was in complete shock to see who the engine was. As Brooke stopped beside him, Lewis spoke up.
Brooke, why are you here?
I've come to help you and your train get to its destination, silly.
Even after all the horrible things I've said about you?
Of course. You're me little brother after all. And it's about time I became a better sister. Lewis was stunned by Brooke's words. He didn't even know what to say. Now then, let's get this train moving. And without wasting any more time, Brooke moved off to get into position. Once Brooke had crossed over the point, she backed down onto Lewis and was immediately coupled up. Once the coupling was fastened and the guard blew his whistle, with a massive heave, both engines began to move the train behind them. Wheel turn by wheel turn, both engines continued to pull as hard as they could until eventually they were clear of the station and out on the open main line, with signals glowing bright green indicating they had a clear path ahead of them. Although the two engines couldn't go very fast due to the railway's 40-mile-an-hour speed limit, the two engines coasted along with their train. Both engines hoped that they would be able to make up some of the time they had lost, and that the passengers wouldn't mind if they were a little bit late. Eventually, the two engines arrived at the foot of the Summer Lake Pass. The two siblings charged at the massive incline ahead of them. With the two of them together, they charged up the massive 1 in 40 gradient almost effortlessly. They did it so well that the coaches were basically light as fluff. In no time at all, both engines crested the top of the hill and began their gradual descent down the other side. Whilst the other side had a less severe gradient, it was far longer compared to the ascent, but eventually, both engines made it to the bottom and began their final approach to Louisu. After a few minutes or so, both engines were greeted by the sight of Louisu Station. Both engines cheered with joy. They had made it. The HST in the mainline platform was waiting for them. They were in awe to see two Caledonian 66s double-heading a single train. The two siblings rolled into the platform only a few minutes late. Once the train stopped, the passengers scrambled into the coaches of the HST, which soon departed back for Paddington. Once the mainline train was clear of the station, Brooke and Lewis headed over to the sheds for a rest. After their journey, they very much earned it. Once the two of them got to the sheds and settled down into their berths, there was silence for a bit, until Lewis took a deep breath before speaking to his sister.
Brooke?
Yes, Lewis?
Listen, I know this doesn't mean much in the grand scheme of things, but I want to apologize for my abhorrent actions these past few days. I was completely out of line. I didn't think that you had actually changed your ways for the better, but you have proven me wrong.
Thank you, Lewis. And I'm sorry too. I'm sorry for being a spoiled, entitled brat. I wanted to make amends with you for a long time. I just never had the chance. But now, I can safely say my quest is complete.
Do you think we can put all this behind us and start over?
Seeing as we're some of the only members of our class left, I would love that, Lewis.
Thank you.
And for the first time in forever, the two siblings smiled warmly at each other. The rest of Brooke's day went swimmingly. The two engines hauled several Caledonian specials together, and the passengers were thrilled by this. The other engines were relieved to hear that Brooke and Lewis had made up, meaning that all the tensions in the air between them were now gone, and things can go back to normal. Eventually, though, the workload died down, and it was soon time for Brooke to return home. Mitch, Lewis, and Alistair all gathered at Louisu Station to see her off. Well, lads, I just want to say thank you for your hospitality during my stay. It's been our pleasure, Brooke, and thank you for helping us during the summer. We really needed it. I didn't know we could even cope with our current roster. Thank you again for the help, Loss. We really appreciate it. No worry, lads. And Lewis, thank you ever so much. I'm glad we're on good terms at long last. Lewis didn't say anything, but the heartwarming expression on his smoke box told Brooke everything. Soon, a Class 47 arrived to take Brooke back to her home in Scotland. As the diesel coupled up, Brooke spoke to the other engines. Farewell, lads. Hopefully one day we'll meet again. Hopefully we will. Safe journey back home. Once everything was checked, and after being given the all clear, the Class 47 towed Brooke out of the station and began the long journey back to Scotland. The other engines watched them go until they were out of sight and out on the national network. The engines were sad to see her go, as they were very thankful for the help that she had provided. but none more so than Lewis. After over a century of resentment, he had finally put his grudge to rest.